name is Laura Boccadoro. I am the Marketing and Development Manager here at the New Haven Pride Center, and I'm so excited to welcome you all to our Queer and Disabled panel. Just before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we're hosting this event. So the New Haven Pride Center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mansatucket, Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Shagatoke, Golden Hill, Paugussett, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac peoples. Please take a moment to acknowledge and honor the Native people whose lands you occupy and the history of the place you are in. Now, I'd like to start to introduce our panelists. So first, I'd like to introduce disabled rights activist Elaine Kolb, Max Fallon-Goodwin, and Finn Lockwood. Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Oh, your mic's unmuted. Yes. Okay, cool. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with y'all. Kind of just to start, let's do some brief introductions, just like kind of about ourselves and whatnot. So again, I'm Laura, I'm queer, and I'm disabled. Whoever wants to go. Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Max. I'm also queer and disabled. I'm a current student at Smith College where I'm double majoring in study of women and gender and Africana studies with a focus on food movements and food justice. I most recently was published in Whetstone magazine. My research took me to Auburn, New York, where I wrote about Harriet Tubman's time in Auburn.
Wow.
I'm really excited to have this discussion and get to know everyone more. Yeah.
Then you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Finn. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am the trans program curator at New Haven Pride Center. And I, too, am queer and disabled. I am also trans and non-binary, and there are a lot of ands I could add to that. But for right now, I think like it's really exciting, one, to have a coworker who is also queer and disabled, and to like be able to, you know, explore that together, and also to have like a community within like the LGBTQ community as a whole in the state. I'm just really excited to be here, and it's an honor to talk with y'all.
Elaine, do you want to do like a little introduction?
Absolutely. It's just that I'm Elaine Kolb, she, they, we, and part of what we do in disability justice events, which we will become as we keep learning more and more about these things, but in really inclusive events that are disability justice oriented, we try to provide visual description for people that have low vision or are blind, and for other reasons. So it's just helpful. And so mine is kind of extensive, but it's also part of a poem. So I am a fat, old, ruddy white dyke with short gray hair, sitting in a six-wheeled power wheelchair, flying a rainbow flag, wearing a tie-dye t-shirt with a rainbow peace sign necklace, and also a Black Lives Matter pin and a Real Healthcare for All button. And I have been involved with lesbian, LGBTQIA, XYZ, yabba dabba doo, I'm queer, that's me. How about you? I've been involved now. I came out before the Stonewall Uprising in 1968 in Buffalo, New York. Not the hotbed of like, anyway. So, but I acquired my physical disability in 1977. So this is the thing. Part of what has been a heartache all these years, once I acquired the obvious physical disability, is I have not felt welcomed or affirmed as part of the LGBTQIA community, although I have tried. And we have such an opportunity. What we can do together and bringing in other people too, but by telling our stories and sharing them, oh, wow. And we can lift each other up. When the Poor People's Campaign, the new one, I'm old enough to remember the original one, but the new one, they have a song that says, when you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. And we, as queers with disabilities, have the combination of consciousness, experience, and mutuality to do something that's really never really been done before. We have the opportunity to create something that is interracial, multicultural, intergenerational, gender fluid, and the change, this is what hasn't happened, disability inclusive. Everyone, everyone, that's us, everyone. Yay, we can do it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Elaine. I'm so excited to sit down with all of y'all. I know me personally, I mentioned it to y'all before. It was really hard for me to identify as disabled for a long time and consider myself disabled because all my disabilities are invisible for the most part. The only thing you can see is my hands are a little crooked, but that's about it. So it was very hard for me for a very long time, especially being queer and disabled. There are just sometimes it's just hard to access spaces. Like there are certain places where we were talking about earlier, there's stairs and nowhere else to get access, or there's places that don't have doors that we can open, or there's places that are just not accessible to folks who use either mobility equipment or have trouble using stairs or trouble walking, or have trouble with their eyes and ears. But I would just love to dive into kind of like a conversation around that at first. Like, what do y'all think we could do better to create more accessible spaces? And what would you kind of like to see out of the able-bodied queer community to help us access those spaces? So, yeah. I know that was a long question.
Can I just suggest that we begin to shift a little bit? Because long time ago, we would say ABs for able bodies, that within disability rights culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then we thought about it and said, well, it's not just able bodies. You know, it's disabilities are not just about the body.
Mm-hmm.
So what we really came up with that I think is the best, to be honest, is not yet disabled.
That's
because
fair.
guess what? It's a majority experience.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pass the word to people that, guess what? You're just not yet disabled, but live long enough and you'll join us. And then that's when disabilitophobia. Oh, no, not that. Anything but that. So that's the other thing. Add to ableism, disabilitophobia.
I appreciate you sharing that.
And I think to add to that, Elaine, I think of like the way we think about accessibility. I think we need to reframe that thought. Instead of thinking, how can these places be made more accessible? I think we need to think about how society can bring more people into understanding their disability. So like everything is built thinking that everyone has two legs to walk on, two eyes to see from. And instead of framing society in that way, we need to restructure the whole thing. And everything just needs to be made equitable with every single person in mind. Bring nuance, bring the collective thought into conversation constantly when you're building a program like this, when you're opening a bar, whatever you're doing, like, how can I make sure everyone can be invited? And how can I listen when someone says they didn't feel invited into this space?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think everything that was said so far is so to the point. I think that one of the questions you asked, Laura, is like, what can, the not yet disabled community do to, support us? And I think it's just, number one, listening, number two, believing us and not making us prove something.
Mm-hmm.
And number three, also not making it seem like we're, unicorns or the minority or special by asking for accommodations. Max used a really great word, equity. We're not all born with the same thing. Sometimes, like for myself, a lot of my disabilities, and I know some people in our circles don't even like using that word disability for a lot of the stuff that I hold as a disability. So I just want to say that these are my own experiences, but like a lot of them, I've been living with them since birth. So it's like I have always been in this body. And that's just how it is. And that's just how the world is. And I think that we all need to accept that we're not all on the same playing field.
I couldn't, when you said like we're not all unicorns, like that alone is such a great like way of putting it, because people do look at, specifically I feel like queer disabled folks, as like, whoa, what an anomaly, like oh my gosh, like you're so different. And it's like, it's not a trend. This is my life, and I've been living this experience for X amount of years, and this is part of my identity. And it's almost like, what's the word, it's looked at in a way where it's like you're either helpless or you're just different. And that idea, I know, of helplessness, like when a lot of people that don't know me really well see me walk around with my cane, most of them are like, oh, what did you do to yourself? Are you okay? Are you injured? And then it's me having to then do the emotional labor of explaining, well, I have X, Y, and Z, and that's why I have to use a cane sometimes. Because especially when I don't use a cane, people are like, well, I saw you with a cane yesterday. And it's like, yeah, well, I don't have to use it every day, but I am still disabled. And I know me personally, like when I walk around downtown New Haven, like the looks that I sometimes get as a younger person using a cane with invisible, all my disabilities are, you can't see them on the outside. I get some looks, and I get strangers who ask me why I'm using a cane. And it's like, why do we constantly have to do the emotional labor of explaining to somebody what our disability is, why we are disabled, what happened to us, like why, like we have to explain ourselves as to why we need either mobility aids or why we need to ask for help or so on and so forth. So I appreciate you bringing that point up, Finn, for sure.
And I want to add to what both Finn and Laura were saying about like access and having to prove, because there's so much bureaucratic proof that we have to give. And I think that's something too for people who are owning businesses, people who might have queer workers for them, is to not need like bureaucratic paperwork to prove a disability. Because for the most part, it takes so long for a diagnosis to happen. It takes so long for you to be able to have access to that proof that you sometimes need. So yeah, just like not needing to prove it on any level, just being like, nope, this is my body. I know my body. I actually understand my body better than anyone else. So I'm going to tell you that I am disabled and I need this thing to help me through the day.
Absolutely. So we just got a question from Aaron O'Donnell. What would you like to see from the healthcare companies to help the queer disabled community, policy-wise or representation? I have just a quick thing. I'm sorry to just jump right in. But one of the things I struggle with is severe endometriosis. And as a queer woman, going to seek gynecology or OBGYN stuff can be very uncomfortable sometimes. Especially as somebody who has reproductive issues, to say the most part. And I would love for healthcare places to just not judge, just listen. Because I know me personally, I recently got like half of my reproductive organs removed because of how bad it was getting. And when I asked them if they could just do a full hysterectomy, it's, oh, you're so young. What if you want to have kids? Da 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 da. This and that. You'll have to do IVF one day, and it's just like, I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm telling you what would make my life easier as a disabled person. Because honestly, endometriosis was one of the things that was slowly killing me the most. But please, I would love to hear, Elaine, I would love to hear from you next.
Well, see, this is the thing. Unfortunately, we still live in the medical industrial complex with the pharmaceutical people kind of in charge, and then the insurance people on top of that. And so then you got all these various and assorted bureaucrats on top of all that. So this is part of the problem. As people with disabilities, all different kinds of disabilities, it's like I still have to prove. I was injured on September 30th, 1977. There has been no miraculous change in my condition. In fact, I'm getting older now, and I'm lucky me, I get to have more. Yeah. And some of the things that are actually most personally complex for me to manage are the emotional issues that I had that preceded my physical disability, because I had them. So nobody can see those. If I don't tell you about them, you would never know. Mm-hmm. And then, given the fact that I acquired the physical disability by being stabbed in the back, little PTSD, you think? So, but the medical system is horrendous. So, what we need as human beings, we need universal health care. Simple concept, but that's really what we need. And the universal health care needs to include individually appropriate services, equipment, training, therapies. But no, they say, okay, you have a spinal cord injury, you qualified for this, blah, blah, blah. If you can just see, the thing is, people, non-disabled or not yet disabled people, I use both terms, are under the false impression that, oh, we got charities to take care of them. Mm-hmm. Everything's fine. And now they, because we're always we have places for them. And they have the Americans with Disabilities Act now, and that takes care of everything. And, they're fine. No problem. They got curb cuts. Wow. What most people don't understand is that the most dangerous thing that we have to do as people with disabilities is to go to the hospital without somebody with us. And that's been one of the most horrifying things that has happened to a lot of our people, is that we can't safely be there without somebody as a witness and to be our advocate. It's just dangerous. Mm-hmm. And they haven't even provided accessible exam tables yet. Mm-hmm. They're only glorified barber chairs.
Absolutely.
So, come on.
Yeah.
And so, what happens is, for some of our people, is they will just randomly select 4 or 5 people to come have never touched you before and don't ask you what you need. They just come, grab you, pick you up, plop you down.
People just don't understand how dehumanizing that stuff is. And like, I had to file a complaint with Yale ER once because of like almost having a fall incident because I couldn't bring my partner with me and they refused to help me go to the bathroom. They refused to bring me to the bathroom because I looked fine. And I almost fell and cracked my head open. And I had to file a complaint with them and do all this follow up. And, oh, we thought you were fine. You looked like you were doing well. Da 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 da. And it's like, I'm telling you, my pain level is on a 7 still. Just because I don't look like I'm dying, you're gonna devalue like the care that I need, and that you're not allowing me to access. And it's just so performative as well, you know. And I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much space.
Right.
No, you're taking up too much space, and let's not do that to each other or to our friends. Speak. We love you.
Absolutely. And I think to both what both of you said is and to like the question earlier is thinking about it like, I don't know if I'd ever feel safe in the healthcare system as it stands, which I feel like sounds very pessimistic. But I think the healthcare system as it stands is a violence against disabled people. It's a violence against queer people, Black people. And that violence also stems from capitalism. And I think that's also very important to acknowledge is that our medical industry is a for-profit business. Our bodies are for-profit and they can be butchered, they can be maimed just so someone can make a buck, or they can be completely ignored. And it's terrifying. Like every time I go to the ER a lot, every time I go, it's like I'm fighting to prove that there's something wrong with me. It's never just like this easy thing. It's always an argument with a doctor. The worst case I had was during early COVID. I got COVID in May 2020. March 2020. So really early. And I have like horrible asthma. I was unable to breathe, went to the ER. The sheets that they put me in the room were covered in snot, like from someone else. And when I brought it to the nurse's attention, she picked up the sheets, threw them away, like didn't say anything to me. And then like wouldn't listen to me when I was like complaining. I was like sitting there like I can't breathe. And then she wanted to give me, it was like 3 a.m. Steroids. And I was like, I don't want to take steroids at 3 a.m. It's going to give me anxiety. And she's like, that doesn't happen with steroids. My mom was panicking because she knew I had asthma and like COVID was just happening. She wouldn't talk to my mom on the phone. And it's just like constantly, like if you can't be an advocate or you don't have someone to advocate, like you could just die on a table and it would feel like no one cared. So I think in order for us to really like build a healthcare system that works for queer disabled bodies, we have to like work in our communities. And like, that's where like the safety starts. And that's where we build from is like building this safe community and like doing stuff like this, where we're making these communal connections is like the most important thing to me right now.
Yes. We need like trainings. We need folks to we need disabled people to be doing trainings to be able, because the competency, like the lack of, is so infuriating. And it's like the fact that we have to be dehumanized. And like you said, we're just things of money, right? We're just profits for folks. It's like, how are you supposed to feel safe going into a space? And as a disabled person needing medical care, how are you supposed to feel safe to go to a space that's supposed to help you? But then at the end of the day, it's just traumatizing to go there because, you know, it's not accessible. It makes you feel bad about I mean, I know me personally, it makes me feel bad about myself. And, you know, it's hard to not be like, well, am I the problem? And I know, and we all know we're not, right? We all know we're not. But it's so, it's so traumatizing to, especially queer disabled folks queer folks are already super abused in the medical system. You know what I mean? And on top of having disabilities, like we need queer and disabled folks like doing trainings on the field, talking to medical staff and professionals and educating them on how to respectfully, humanely treat queer disabled people.
They should hire a whole bunch of us
Yeah.
to do this.
And all of us, we're here.
You know,
We're all queer and disabled. Hire us.
hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Finn, I would like to hear more from you a little bit about this, because I'm a charter member of On and On Anonymous. I can go on and on and on.
Elaine, me too.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly just kind of taking it all in because, like, I knew this would happen, but it's always so, like, some of the experiences I've had in, you know, the medical field, I'm like, there's no way this happens to other people all the time. Like, maybe, you know, maybe it's in my head, like maybe I'm just, you know, trying to like victimize myself or whatever kind of bullshit, excuse my French, has been, you know, fed to me to make me feel this way about myself. But, you know, like at the end of the day, I don't really feel safe going to doctors anymore. Like, Elaine, I feel like I was taken aback by your, you know, recount of a bunch of strangers coming into the room and just their hands on you, and you lose that autonomy. I think that was another word that came up, to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I have going on. One of the things I have is a rare form of psoriasis called pustular psoriasis, and it's debilitating at times. It flares up, it comes and goes. Sometimes, like right now, I have a flare up on my like torso, and like, you know, content warning for some of the things I'm saying for folks that might have issues with hearing about things like this. But like, I haven't been able to wear a bra for like the past week or so because of my psoriasis. And there have been times where I've been to the ER, and because it's such a rare form of psoriasis, it's not seen often. And it's a very common experience for me to go into an ER and then suddenly, especially at Yale, I'm just going to say it, I have all of a sudden the room is flooded with students, like medical students, taking pictures of my body, taking notes. I'm getting chills as I'm saying this because it may not be a surprise to y'all that I have PTSD from many different things in my life, including my medical experiences. So I think that one thing that we can do is absolutely get better representation for what queer disabled bodies can look like. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, and also Max, you said something about like going into the ER and doctors telling you like, you know, taking steroids and you're worried about it and affecting your anxiety, because I'm assuming you have had that experience and you know yourself well enough to say no, and the doctors are saying, yeah, you're wrong about your own body. It's mind-boggling. So yeah.
I've had issues with doctors just wanting to pump me with pain meds, put me up with pain meds, and I'm a recovering addict. And every time I go to the ER, the first thing they say is, well, do you want some form of narcotic? And every time I have to tell them, I'm not here for that. I can't have that. And if they're basically like, well, we can't do anything for you then. And it's just like, it blows my mind. Like, I'm calling 911 for an ambulance to come and pick me up at my house, and you can't do anything for me. Like, it really needs to be something like that's assessed. And I sat down one time with a representative from the Yale ER and talked specifically about queer experiences, but did innuendo towards queer disabled experiences. Never got a response back from them. And it's just, I wish people would be more willing to have these conversations, because like, for what you just said, Finn, I wish we didn't have to put like disclosures around stuff like that. Like, we should be able to talk about our disabilities and how they affect us in whatever way like we can and how we want to. But instead we have to filter ourselves because it may be uncomfortable for folks, or it may be, you know, triggering for somebody. And it's like, well, this is my body. Yeah, it's triggering for me too. You know?
I just
Thank
wanted
you
to
for saying that.
clarify something about the getting thrown around like a sack of potatoes thing. I've had a little bit of that personally.
Mm-hmm.
More often, it's been that I was there with someone else to be the person that was the advocate and the representative and the spokesperson and whatever. And especially my partner, Patty. We were together for 11 and a half years. We met at an ADAPT demonstration in San Francisco in 1987. At the time, I was living in Atlanta and she was living in New Haven. Well, guess what? We fell in love. Well, that's how I ended up in the area here. And Patty, her name was Patty Deek, and she had one of those disabilities that just gets worse all the time, like muscular dystrophy and related conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she had a related condition. So she was one of Jerry's kids, or as some of us changed the title to, Jerry's orphans. Anyway, so by the time we met, Patty's disabilities had advanced to the point that she was quadriplegic. She could do a lot of things, and she had very significant scoliosis of the spine. And so she had Harrington rods put in her back to stop. Once the spine starts twisting, you can't bring it back, but you can stop it from twisting any further.
Mm-hmm.
So she had Harrington rods put in her back. And there was no way she could physically do a lot, especially get up on an exam table. But one of the times, many times, we went to the hospital. Then they put her up on the table, which anytime they put her on her back was excruciatingly painful for her. So she was put on one of those tables for an x-ray, and I was told to wait outside. And then the staff got called away. And Patty also was severely hearing impaired. And of course, they took her hearing aids out. So Patty was laying there in the dark, on her back, in pain, trapped. And they got called to an emergency in another room and left her there. And I heard her calling, Elaine, Elaine. And I went in, and there she was. So after that, I insisted upon one of their lead jackets, and I would never leave the room again. But she had to have x-rays.
Appreciate you sharing that with us, Elaine. That just shows like how much.
This happened so many different times in so many different ways. And how do we manage to still find the courage and the strength to fight for our lives, because we have to? Because if we give up, they're more than happy to let us go.
I couldn't agree more. I know for a long time I used my disabilities as a crutch. I can't do this because of that, and then I kind of, when I kind of came out as queer, I was like, oh, I can be queer and I can be disabled and I don't have to use it as a crutch. But like society tells you to use it as a crutch, right? Everyone says you're disabled. Oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. But like what Max said earlier about equity, like people thinking about that when creating spaces or so on and so forth, that is like what we have to do moving forward. Like we can't And again, you said it too, Elaine, this societal, like, just pressure of like being disabled in like a certain way and how the society views disabled folks. We have to change that narrative. Or not even change is not quite the right word I'm looking for. Rewrite. We must rewrite that narrative, and look for that equity for all. Like you say, Lane, it's all of us, you know?
And I also think I really appreciate having Elaine here, because I think calling back to the people who have been organizing around disability justice for a long time is paramount in moving forward. Because I think back to, like, you know, my own ancestors and like maternal care between like slave women. It's like there was always sources of care for our bodies that were outside of medical norms. And then I think, you know, like Black Panther Party setting up like medical stations. So there is this like history of communities coming together to care for each other's bodies outside of for-profit medicine. And I think that that's something, like having Elaine here really inspires me to be like, we need to rebuild those. Yeah.
I'm very grateful to have Elaine here as well, and we're able to have these conversations. And you know, some of us are, I don't know, I think I might be the youngest one here, but but I really love being able to like hear these experiences that I never knew, you know, happened. I can only really know my own experiences. So Elaine, I really appreciate your vulnerability with us as well, and everybody's vulnerability here right now.
That's our strength. It really is. Our strength is to be willing to be real in a fake culture. Being real is revolutionary.
Amen.
Yeah. I think we just had a question pop up, but I'm not exactly sure what it said. But I think
go ahead.
Did you catch it? Okay.
Yeah, it was. Wait, Sione might have just put it in. Yeah, she
Cool.
did. What would you like not yet disabled people to understand about being both queer and disabled? How do those two experiences interact in your life and in general?
So I feel like, if I may talk about this a little bit, because I find that I was thinking earlier today, and I feel like for me personally, my queerness, my transness is like, it is absolutely like linked to my disability in a way that like I can't disentangle the two sometimes. Like, were it not for my disabilities, like, you know, I do have multiple, but the one that affects me, I think, the most in the most impactful ways is the pustular psoriasis, because of how disabling it has been. Like, I realized I was non-binary because of having psoriasis. Like, it was the one thing in my life that could like stop me and slow me down enough, because I also do have ADHD as well. So like, you know, being a person who is neurodivergent is really difficult in a world that is like constantly go, go, go. There is no time for you sometimes to really explore yourself deeper than like, how the fuck do I stay alive day to day? So when I had a particularly bad psoriasis flare up, like, I was in bed and out of work for, you know, weeks at a time. And it forced me to realize, like, why do I feel so, obviously I have this, you know, disorder that is making me feel so physically uncomfortable, but this discomfort is not like, it's familiar. It's something I feel constantly. And it's not just from this disability I have. There's got to be something else. And like, that made me start to realize that, you know, I was non-binary, and I, you know, a couple years later, I started HRT. And I feel like I want more people to like, I feel like sometimes, at least in my experiences, you know, maybe more with mental health and stuff, I think a lot of times my queerness or my transness is focused on more than the other things that I think are affecting me more. Like, to say that I think my queerness is seen as, again, an anomaly, and that's what's making me depressed. So all of my medical providers and therapists, thank God I have an amazing therapist now, shout out to Andrea, but like in the past, like I've had people just be like, oh, so I see you're trans, you must be sad about that all the time, right? And it's like, no, that's one of the few things that like brings me joy on a daily basis. My transness brings me joy. As much heartache as it's brought me, it brings me joy every single day. And I can say that without a doubt. And like people need to stop thinking that our queerness is part of the problem, you know? Yeah. I feel like I got really into that. So someone else definitely go ahead.
But that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I guess I have a lot
do
to
it.
say.
Absolutely.
We're just gonna need part 2. That's all.
There we go.
Let's just see this as the beginning of us opening up and just letting it all pour out whenever possible, and giving each other and ourselves the space and permission to do that. When I was newly disabled, in terms of the physical disability, part of what helped me personally tremendously was that I was already a poet and a songwriter, and already an activist. So it was like, oh, yeah, well, this sucks, but, you know, I can write songs about this too. You know, like I can be an activist, I can do disability rights stuff. Yeah. So, and one of my songs is "A Crip Can Be Hip."
That's
I
amazing.
can't wait to sing for you.
I
Good to hear it.
You know,
great.
it's, and you see, the thing is that I think that, and I'd like others to share also, if you have creative outlets of your own in different ways. I can't imagine how I could have survived all these years if I didn't have this gift of the poetry and the songs that come to me that then I am able to share with people. What I tell people is that without this gift, I might still be breathing, but I wouldn't be alive. So, what are some of the gifts that you have, or the sharings that you have discovered that helps to bring your spirit up so that you can manage, even though sometimes it's really horrible, but life is wonderful and awful at the same time. We, as queer disabled people, understand that better than almost anyone. That's power.
I know, like within my queerness, it actually, I was diagnosed with most of my disabilities prior to coming out as queer. And I know that when I came out, it actually gave me empowerment to talk about being queer and disabled and talk to people, you know, like about my experiences and not feel shame for that and not feel shame for needing help or needing extra support and whatnot. Because I had a really hard time at college with being disabled. Colleges sometimes look at you like a nuisance almost. You have to have all this paperwork and stuff, but that's a whole nother topic. But I know one of the outlets that I use is drawing. I use an iPad because I can't physically draw anymore. My hands shake a little too much. So I found all this. I used to draw all the time, but my hands started getting really bad a couple of years ago. My knees and my hands are the worst, so my walking and my writing and whatnot's gotten a lot worse. But my awesome girlfriend bought me a cheap iPad for being able to draw on, and I draw hands a lot. I draw like bodies, all different kinds of bodies a lot, with all different forms and shapes and sizes and things on them. Because representation is important, whether it be in song, it be in poetry, it be in drawings, movies, conversations like this. Like, yeah, it's just the representation's important. But
Okay, I did see a question that Ocean put up about what are some of the things that allies can do to support us? What opportunities are there for allies to support?
anyone want to take it down?
I feel like, Max, you had something you were gonna say too. Also,
Yeah, I can sort of connect it all. I think like when you exist in a queer body, you're already existing in a non-normative body, like to what society standards are. So to exist as someone who is queer and disabled and Black, it's like all of these things exist outside of what the heteropatriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy want you to be and want you to look like and want you to function as. So I feel like all of them are constantly working in tandem together, and like all of us, all these different people who exist outside of normative standards. Again, I like keep talking about collectivism because it's like all I think about all the time right now is like all of those are inside my body. Like I am the embodiment of every part of, like, all of those exist at one time. It's not like sometimes I feel more queer and less disabled. No, that exists in tandem. So I feel like, yeah, we need to be constantly working together again, because something that supports Black women is most likely going to also be something that, you know, supports another person who is outside of what society wants to support. And what can allies do to be better is, I think it's a huge, like, the sympathy versus empathy thing that happens, where I expect people to be empathetic. Like I want that, but I don't want someone to be
Feel sorry for you.
oh yeah, feel sorry, or like I have epilepsy. I don't want someone to be like, oh well, I had a really bad migraine once. Like I get it. Like I don't want the constant comparison, because it's okay not to get it. It's okay not to be in this part of the community and not understand, but you can like be there and you can listen, and that's, I think, what we're all asking for, is just to be heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, listen and then follow directions. I mean, it's just people like want to take over my life and they're not qualified. You know, if they keep wanting to tell me what they want to do to help me. And it's like, you have no idea who I am and what I need. So
what I'm capable of.
Yeah. You know, I mean, just so you know, this is just so weird, because there's only two problems with disabilities: having one that's apparent or visible, and then having one that's not apparent or visible. I get to have all of the above. And keep coming. Woohoo! It's like
jackpot.
Disability of the Month Club. Oh no. Keep getting more.
Me too. Every year it feels like a new. And the past 5 years, I've gotten 2 new ones, and mental health ones. So
it's like scout badges or something, like you know,
or something.
Yeah, bingo. That's a good
get my
one.
prize at this point.
That's a good one.
I feel like I deserve it at this point.
I feel like I did want to. I see that Ocean also asked specifically, what is the next step from here for NHPC and the activists here? And I thought that was a really good question too. And I think, like, you know, for speaking as a program, the trans program curator at New Haven Pride Center, I know that there are things that I'm going to miss. And, like, you know, even though I am a person who is disabled myself, like, I need to always have an open mind. So I just, like, I think that goes for everybody. And, like, the idea of equity too, like realizing our privilege within our own communities too is extremely important, and keeping things as intersectional as possible, because, like, you know, like Max, what you were saying, like something that could benefit you know, a Black woman might benefit like someone within the trans community. And that's why it's so important for us to like keep it connected, keep it collective. Like, I think talking and thinking about collectivism all day is a good thing. And like, I feel like there's like, I'm hopeful and I like to see like the good around me. And I do think that there's like a positive trend towards like, at least within like our communities, like there's a trend towards collectivism, people wanting to work together. Like, I know more about trans healthcare from my trans peers and like my partner who is trans and also disabled. Like, I feel more supported by my community right now than I do like my primary care doctor. And I hope they're not watching, but like, it is what it is,
I
you know?
hope they are. I hope they are.
Honestly, yeah. Like,
I hope they are.
yeah.
I understand that a lot in a similar way, in a different way at the same time, because I only kind of was able to find the resources that I needed through the Pride Center and through our community. And it was what I was going to say, just like left my mind, but it's so important to like have these conversations and bring light to this. So like, I know me personally through NHPC, like I'm not a programming staff, but I will sure as hell, excuse my French, do more of these conversations, events, you know, like action events. And I know all of our program curators that we already have, like, think about, you know, disability access and think about that stuff. So I'm appreciative of all of our staff at NHPC. So I just wanted to put that.
Yeah. I think
I
this
just-
answers the question a
Go
little
ahead.
bit.
Go
Sorry, go ahead, Elaine.
No, you go ahead, Max.
This is like answering the question and also going back to what everyone's saying is I wanted to share this like essay I really love by Eli Clare, The Mountain, from their book Exile and Pride, that I'm obsessed with, because it goes to like what I think the next step is. And the quote is on the last page. Crip, queer, freak, redneck will be mere words describing human difference. Super Crip will be dead. The nursing home burnt down. The metaphoric mountain collapsed in volcanic splendor. Post-revolution, I expect there will be a literal mountain I want to climb but can't. But I'll be able to say without a doubt, without hesitation, let's turn around. This one step is too slippery for my feet. And it's something I go back to a lot of the times when I'm thinking about like all the things I want to do without resting, without like on it is Exile and Pride by Ela Clare Ciani. Just thinking about resting in my queer disabled body, thinking about the limitations that do exist, that it's like okay to have limitations. I don't constantly have to push myself. And I think that's like next step in a revolutionary society for me would be no one expected to go outside of what their body is actually physically capable of, and accepting our limitations in a way that is transformative.
Appreciate you hearing that.
Yeah.
I am personally just thrilled. I don't even have the words for how happy I am right now, because I have been waiting for decades, hoping and praying and meditating and saying, come on. And here we are, and we're doing it. And what we're going to do is so needed by us and by everyone. At this point in time, we are here. We are here specifically at this time to do this amazing work together. And we've been guided to find each other. And here we are. And just today, this came through. And because I don't know why, but for months now, I've been writing haiku. I don't know. Anyway, it's happening. It wakes me up in the middle of the night. I have to get up and write them and then go back to bed. Otherwise, I won't remember. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so how about this? Does it work for everyone? Self-love is the way. So elusive for so long. love is inclusive. How's that for a haiku for us?
Yes.
I have had such
Beautiful.
a hard time with self-love. Most of my life, I didn't even like myself. I could like anyone else in the world, even horrible people that did awful things. I found it easier to forgive and like them, even love them, than to be nice to myself or love myself.
Absolutely.
And here we are, together. Together we can do this. And in reflecting each other's beauty, we will feel more of our own beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was so well said, Elaine.
It's beautiful.
Oh, you're gonna get me.
Replace inequitable colonist structures as well.
This has been one of the best conversations I feel like I've ever had.
Lovely.
And I feel very honored to be with all of you. I really appreciate, again, all of y'all's vulnerability during this conversation. I know sometimes it's not easy, but it's so necessary to talk about this stuff and normalize it for the most part. So if anybody has anything last that they want to say, now's the time.
Yeah, just thank you so much for hosting this. I feel so privileged to be a part of this conversation. All of y'all are so beautiful. I'm so happy to talk with you. So thanks again.
Could I sing a little bit at the end?
You have 2 minutes to sing, so heck yeah, you can.
Woohoo! Plenty of time as far as I'm concerned. This is the title song of my only recorded in a studio thing. Okay. It was recorded in London, England. And it's called We Are Everyone. We are everyone, and we've only just begun to understand the truth that sets us free. We are everywhere, whenever people care enough to be the best that we can be. And we are every way that people love and pray, on the mountains, the deserts, and the sea. And everyone includes you and me. We're your sisters and your brothers, your fathers and your mothers. We are the fruit of every family tree. And the nuts. Your neighbors and your friends. The circle never ends. We are every kind and we are each degree. Every color, every shade, every class and every grade. For ages now the world has kept us down. We are rising now from our struggles. We've learned how to share the joy and beauty that we found. And we are everyone. We've only just begun to understand the truth that sets us free. We are everywhere, whenever people care enough to be the best that we can be. And we are every way. People love and pray, on the mountains, the deserts, and the sea. Everyone includes you and me. We are weak and we are strong. We are right and we are wrong. We're trying to make it better as we go. We are young and we are old. Our stories will be told. We're sharing with each other as we grow. We are born and then we die. And in between we try to do the best we can with who we are. And together we find the bravest souls are kind.
Woo!
And always try to touch a shining star. 'Cause we are everyone. We've only just begun to understand the truth that sets us free. We are everywhere, whenever people care enough to be the best that we can be. And we are every way People love and pray on the mountains, the deserts, and the sea. And everyone includes you and me. Everyone includes you and me. That means everyone.
Woo!
Woo!
Thank you, Elaine.
So you're gonna join me to record this, right?
Yes.
Oh, I recorded the whole thing already.
Well,
It's already on
Uh-huh.
Spotify. It'll be
we're
on the
gonna have so
radio.
much fun.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's gonna be so much fun. We're gonna have a blast.
We are.
I am just
That was probably the best way to end this. Honestly, I couldn't think of a
Absolutely.
better way to end this. I'm sad that we have to end it, but don't worry, folks
do
watching.
it again.
We'll be doing it again. So stay tuned for more info about that. But thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
You know, this
all.
means I love you,
Oh,
right?
so
This is
beautiful.
the sign for I love you. This is the I and the L. And you put them together and it's I love you. I love you.
Hi, everyone.